welcome to the next episode of Etihad Cargo Connections. I'm your host, Rowan Anderson, and today I'm joined by the young but ultra-talented trainer, Harry Eustace, who comes from a great family of horsemen. Welcome to the show, Harry, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Rowan. Thanks for that lovely introduction.
That's good, mate. Oh, good. Let's start at the beginning of the Harry Eustace story. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born and grew up in Newmarket. Dad was assistant trainer and then started training when I was one, out of Park Lodge where I now train. So for me, depending on who you ask, I luckily grew up in Newmarket. Opinions vary on Newmarket, but I was very fortunate to grow up, one, in Newmarket, and two, in a horse racing environment.
Yeah. And you mentioned your father a moment ago, who was such a great trainer himself. How great of an influence was himself and what he did as a career on your passion for horses? And where did that passion begin? Was it, a straight away thing, pretty much being born into the industry, or where did that begin?
Yeah, it's something where we always grew up, obviously, in and around horses. So it was just sort of part of life, really, having horses in ours. So it wasn't like a sudden passion arrived, because they were just always there for us, but we did always enjoy it, and we were always part of the business as much as we could growing up, be it sort of either riding ponies to then helping in the yard and riding racehorses and going racing and just sort of helping out as much as we could. And then it was sort of I went to university after school, and by then I knew I wanted to be a trainer. But I sort of decided to go for a degree in case horse racing or training didn't work, which actually isn't the sort of motivation you need to do that sort of thing. And it sort of helped clarify that actually what I want to do is be a trainer, and so I need to go out there and start working. And actually, I didn't finish uni. I left halfway through and flew down to Australia and worked for Lee and Anthony Freeman and Peter and Paul Snowden down in Melbourne. Yeah.
And what did you study at university?
I studied chemistry.
Oh, chemistry. Okay. That's a bit different.
Yeah, and it helped. It made the decision a lot easier, I can tell you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you mentioned just at the beginning of the interview that you were born in Newmarket and such a horse-heavy environment. I'm guessing that as well, the fact, Park Lodge as well as Newmarket, growing up in that, as I said, horse-heavy environment, that only, helped grow the passion you had around horses in the industry.
Yeah, I think it does. It can push you one of two ways, really, actually. It's either, as you say, horse-heavy and you sort of don't connect with it, or you connect with it straight away and it's just part of daily life. And very much for myself and my brother, it was always part of our upbringing. And bar being at school, if we weren't at school, we were in the yard and helping out and around horses. So it was just that was our sort of normal day, really.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the Snowdens, the Freedmans as well. There's such, horse institution down here in Australia. What have been the career highlights so far in your training career to date?
Well, personally, there's sort of a few along the way. I was quite lucky. I looked after, not all the way through, sadly, but I looked after Sepoy in his early stages as a 2-year-old. And I actually took him to the races when he won his first start, before having to fly back home. But it meant I sort of followed his career through, which was brilliant to follow and to watch. Then a few others that stand out is probably when I worked for Christophe Clement in America when Tonless won the Belmont. That was an experience in a day I'll certainly never forget. Yeah. When I worked for William Haggis, there's obviously quite a few, but I have to say, traveling a day down to Sydney, that was fantastic what he did down here or down there, sorry. and a trip that, you know, I'll never forget. And the only thing I'd change about that is if there could have been crowds, because it's not the same when you can hear yourself shouting in an empty stand. I can tell you that for free.
Yeah, and just quickly, I've spoken to a lot of trainers and jockeys, and they say the same thing.
Yeah,
And I've interviewed, other athletes from other sports and other codes, and they say, like, as you'd be well aware in Australia, races continued where all other sports shut down during the pandemic and the lockdown. So, even though the industry was still thriving, taking away the crowds, as you said, takes away not only that, extra adrenaline and extra atmosphere, but it has a huge detriment on the industry in other ways,
Yeah, for sure. And then I suppose finally, just personally,
so
oh, sorry, Karen.
No, go, you go. Sorry.
Oh no, and then just probably my first winner I'll never forget, because that's always important. And then obviously Latin Lover at Royal Ascot was a particular highlight for the season just gone. Yeah.
And who was your first winner, and where did that take place?
Coverham was my first winner at Yarmouth, and he was a real stable favourite and had been with Dad for sort of 4 or 5 years previously.
Yeah.
And he was just a horse that sort of summed up the old man and horse racing, really. He was a lovely horse to deal with, great nature, and always tried. And it was just very apt that he was my first winner.
Yeah. And it all just links back to that legacy, as I discussed as well. So I can understand why that would be important, in the family business. And so you've been to Australia to train, as well as in America as well with Christophe Clement. Having been around horses your entire life, and the advancements to traveling horses and moving horses globally, is it still challenging or concerning when you plan to travel? Understanding that some horses take it well and settle well when they land. But what have you learned in terms of that area of, training and having to travel the horses?
I think the big thing is to remember that it's still incredibly difficult, and it's there's lots of horses that travel for international meetings and they either don't run well for a variety of reasons. And I think in particular, like anything, those sort of trips, it's sort of the planning beforehand that goes into it that is key, and just making sure that everyone involved in the trip knows what you want on a day-to-day and sort of routine business. And I think in particular, getting the routine for the horse from day one, wherever they're traveling to, and everyone understanding what and how you want the whole day to go like, and the sort of progression of the day is very important. And if you get into a good routine and everyone knows what that is and how the horse sort of reacts in it, then you're in as good a position as you can be. And then, that's sort of 90%. And then after that, you just need that bit of luck, which is true in all races, let alone international.
Definitely. And we discussed it briefly before as well. You're preparing Cite D'Or for the UAE, and this season. You also said that you've just returned to the UK from your first trip to Dubai. When does the horse arrive, or is she already in Dubai?
Yeah, so she actually flew on the 29th of December. So she's been there sort of a week now. And as I said, as you said, I've just come back from there. I've actually personally never been to Dubai, and I've traveled a lot of horses elsewhere, sort of certainly through America and Australia. And I've always found that having been there before has had a massive help on prepping the horses. So I was keen to go out there and just suss out the facilities and, like I said, just work out her routine. And Laura, who's taken her, has actually been to Dubai and traveled horses there a lot. So she's been a massive help. But just from sort of my personal point of view, just get an idea of where she is and how she's training every day, and just get my bearings. So I was very keen to do that. So that's where I've just come back from. Yeah.
And what were your thoughts on arriving back in terms of the facilities as well as the profile that the UAE has built and developed over the years in terms of racing?
Yeah, I mean, the facilities were fantastic, as I'd heard from a lot of other people, both from, where they're stable to the actual training facilities. Whatever you need, it's there really. There's, different surfaces. There's, all weather, grass, dirt, swimming pools, weighing machines, whatever you need, it's there. So that makes it much easier for me and Laura, and hopefully also the filly. And Dubai itself was it was fantastic. Like I said, I'd never been, and it was a real eye opener, and I really enjoyed it, and looking forward to going back.
And just in terms of the planning, as you said, every aspect of the filly's trip, as well as when she settles, and the races she's penciled for. As a 6 to 7 furlong horse with a preference for turf, what races do you have penciled for her for Cite D'Or to take on?
Yeah, so she's going to start off in a 7 furlong fillies 3-year-old race on the 27th of January, which ticks a lot of boxes for her. And in particular, being a 3-year-old filly only, I think is a big plus point. I think that level of filly, typically people give a good holiday through this winter and aim at sort of better races for the 3-year-old fillies up here in Europe. And there is, I don't want to say a sort of a weaker division, but numbers wise, it's probably lower in that 3-year-old filly category. And I would imagine, I haven't seen all of the form from the local runners, but she would bring as high a level of form as most, I would have thought.
Yeah.
And then that race sits perfectly for the Oaks, which is actually on the dirt over 1.25 miles. Now the dirt is a question mark, but the race fits very nicely, and her last run was actually over 1.25 miles as a 2-year-old. And I think one of her big attributes is her stamina, and I'm hoping this race will really see that to best effect. And so that's the plan. And the Guineas on the grass, which is a week later after the Oaks, is a sort of backup. Say we, have lose a bit of time between, her first race and the Oaks or something like that. That's a backup. But the original plan is, the 7 furlong grass race into the Oaks on the dirt. Yeah.
And are they the races you've got penciled in, or are there any other further races in Saudi or Qatar that you'd be looking to take her to?
I don't think so at the moment. I think at the moment we'll just stick to Dubai. I don't know. I'd imagine some people have gone from Dubai to Saudi and back again, but again, those sort of things that need to be planned a way out. And I think this time round we'll just stick to Dubai and see how we go there, and they'll certainly be there for us next year.
Yeah, and we'll now discuss the Nick Bradley Syndicate racing team that owned the filly. Have you worked with them for long? And was she recommended at the sales? And how did she actually turn up to coming to join you at that stable?
So Cite D'Or, who the filly in Dubai, it's the first one I've had for him. And he sourced her at a breeze up sale in June, actually, in France.
Yeah.
And a guy called Anthony Bromley, who's an owner and has also bought a few horses for me, was also out there. And I think Nick asked his opinion of me, and I suppose it must have been favourable, because he gave me a call and said, would I be interested in training her? So I can't really claim much credit for her. Nick found her, sourced her and bought her, and very kindly sent her to me. And she's been a star. She's my highest rated horse in the yard, and we're having plenty of fun with her already, and hopefully plenty more.
And what is her rating as it stands?
She's 101.
101. And
Yeah.
will Nick and the team be coming to Dubai to watch her in action?
Yeah, I believe so. Certainly for the Oaks. I don't know whether they'll come for both, but certainly the Oaks. I've had plenty of the owners asking me for recommendations for Dubai, but I can't obviously give them any because I've only just been. But it sounds like plenty of them are going as well, and that's the point for them in particular, and that's sort of the idea of Nick Bradley's syndicate. The horses are there to enjoy, and certainly if you've got an above average one to make the most of the experience. So we'll do our best to do that.
And after Dubai, and after the season ends, what are the plans for her? Is she going to be returning to the UK?
Yeah, she'll come back to the UK. You can run well off the plane coming back from Dubai.
Yeah.
They then sometimes or typically do need a bit of a break between the first run and then their following run back, just because obviously she's not really had much of a holiday with Dubai in mind. I think it's quite tough either if you wait a month coming off the plane or run and then sort of run 3 or 4 weeks later. It's quite tough on them. What the race will be, I'm not sure. There's options. There's Oaks trials that she may go for. There's a Pretty Polly at Newmarket, and I know Nick. I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a listed race in France, similar sort of time, April sort of time, May time. So that would be the plan, I would imagine, and then we'll just have to be guided by her after that, and then again, if she has a holiday, trying to enjoy the second half of the season. Yeah.
And with, as you said, she's your highest rated at the moment. How large is the yard? How many members do we have at the moment?
Well, we were sort of 30, 35 last season. And I'm hoping for this year coming up, we'll be sort of 60, 65, which is fantastic. It's a big or a decent jump in number for us. And we've just had a nice response post the sales from people that you'd love to have horses for, and it's a big credit to the whole yard and the team in the yard who work tirelessly all year to give us such a good season to be rewarded with that. So we're very much looking forward to it, and we're busy.
And you mentioned a few names before, Docklands and those runners that you have. Who are some other stars to keep an eye on? But also, you just mentioned the sales. Any up and comers, young ones that we can keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, so Docklands and Couplet are the 3-year-olds sort of at this stage we're most looking forward to. He's owned by OTI and was second first time out, and I think as we said, he needs to sort of win his maiden and just sort of act on the racecourse the way he does at home. But what we see at home is very encouraging, and we're looking forward to having some fun with him. And Couplet, who's by Zoostar, she won her only start and looked visually quite impressive. So she'll have a few targets in some Guineas trials, and if she trains well at home and carries on, then that's where she'll go, and then we'll let the racecourse tell us where our ceiling's at. And as far as sort of the 2-year-old crop goes, I've got a profitable colt that looks quite forward, who I like quite a lot, which is handy because I still currently own him. So I'm sure we'll try and offload him at some point, and hopefully it's after he's won his only start. And I've got quite a nice Zoostar colt, or 2 nice Zoostar colts actually, but one in particular is owned by a guy called Suman Hedge and his sort of syndicate of owners. So they're Aussie based, and so far at the moment he looks to have plenty of quality, but we'll be taking our time with those. I don't think they're necessarily early types, but they just look to have a bit of quality at this stage. But usually the ones I like in January, they're the ones not to follow because I'm a notoriously poor judge.
And we'll go back to the legacy of your family. You've taken over training at Park Lodge now. What what does Park Lodge mean to you and your family as not only a home, but also your base?
Yeah, well, as you said, it's home, which
Yeah.
to work from home, and I mean, a lot of people are enjoying that now, but you know, that's been the case for us for a long time, and I think we're all sort of incredibly proud whenever we bring people round. It's a lovely yard, and mum and dad have kept it immaculately, you know, all these years, and it's allowed, you know, a level of stability and security for me starting off that's allowed me to be, I don't want to say riskier, but take chances in other areas, because we have that sort of bedrock of Park Lodge as home. So it's a lovely yard, and we're incredibly proud I'm incredibly proud to train from here, and it'd be a sad day if one day we have to leave.
Yeah. And you said when you were at university, you went to university really to see if, you had that backup kind of plan if training didn't work out. You've also been involved in bloodstock and auctioneering as well. When was it that you decided that training was where you were meant to be, and you decided to break out on your own to train?
Yeah, probably when I was sort of 17, 18. As you said, I did try a few other things. I went to the Irish National Stud course and just sort of made sure, you know, that I wasn't missing. It's a big industry outside of the training part of it, and I sort of tried to experience as much of it as I could, just to make sure I wasn't missing any part of it that I enjoyed more. But frankly, you know, I love training. I love going to the races, and I think more than anything, the beauty of training races horses is there's a very direct link between the work that goes in and your job satisfaction, because it is literally winning, you know, and lots of jobs actually that it's harder to explain the winning line, whereas in ours it's very clear cut, and so that job satisfaction is very clear cut for us, and hence, you know, sometimes we can get as excited as we do.
Yeah. And you took over Park Lodge in 2021. Was that always the plan, or was that something that just happened? I
mean, I was always going to at some point, and the timing just depended on when it felt right. And obviously my last job was William Haggis, and I had a fantastic time there and worked with some of the very best horses and the very best people, and you know, leaders in the industry, and it was just I was very lucky, or we were very lucky. Dad was there, you know, guiding it through, and you know, he was ready when we were ready, which made it much easier for us, and it was just the right time for me, you know, in 2021. So that's when we went.
And you mentioned William Haggis just a moment ago. You've also worked with, as we said, Lee Friedman and the Snowdens, as well as Clermont in the US. What have these four trainers or training teams taught you that have really bowed you and set you up well in terms of continuing your training career? Not only that, but also, you know, continuing on from everything and the experience and the knowledge that you would have gained from your father in his long career as well.
Yeah, I think it's two things really. One is just the general mindset of how I want to train racehorses, which is a personal thing too, and it's why in every country, you know, some people are better with 2-year-olds and as a general rule, and some are better with stayers and older horses or young horses, and so it's a general just culture around them. I don't think it's necessarily specific things from these guys. It's more the experiences themselves and just the time around them, you know. And the more good horses and the more situations you're around, the more you absorb about how you deal with those sort of horses, and it's those experiences that I've learned, you know, as much from as anything really.
And you've said that work ethic needed in a trainer was instilled in you at an early age from your father, along with the importance of the welfare of your horses. What other key lessons did you learn from him that you really think back on in terms of, being so imperative to know, to be able to set up your career and continue this success within that?
I think the big thing is it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Once you decide to start training racehorses, then hopefully there's horses around 24/7 all year, every year. And so although you want to, work at top level all the time, like I said, you're doing it for a long time. My dad trained for a long time, and that, as much as anything, is a credit to him, because it's tough, and there are good times and there are bad times, and it's sort of riding that out that I think something that I knew about training racehorses more than anything, just because we grew up with it and knew how hard he worked all the time. So that's sort of what I took from that.
Yeah. And that links back to, like I mentioned before the interview, basically, you're 33?
4, yeah.
34. So
I'll take 33 if you want.
33. You're still rather young. And as I said, there's that growing trend of a lot younger trainers and more vibrant, youthful trainers, as such as yourself and James Cummings, who come from that legacy-based families. Yourself with your dad, your brother down here in Australia, as well as James Cummings from, obviously, his grandfather, the master. Both clear examples of horseman families dominating and continuing legacies. What are your thoughts on the importance of that in terms of continuing on and letting the sport and industry grow organically, while also continuing that legacy?
I think it's a testament to the sport, really, that we want to carry on in it, and if we didn't, or if it looked like too much hard work, or actually not as good, as enjoyable as it looked, then we wouldn't do, because we'd firsthand know how hard it is. But it's such a unique sport that I think it will always be the case that it will be that slightly old school sort of handing down these training sort of setups, or even on the stud side, to the younger generation. And it's very important in racing that they carry on. I mean, it's not to say that people outside of racing can't and don't get involved, and some of the very best don't have those backgrounds, and I'm incredibly lucky too. Annabelle Neesham down there would be a great example of someone who's really taken over Oz by storm, really, and has a horsey background, but not necessarily the sort of leg up that or the sort of background that we had. But I think in general, just everyone's approach to it's key, and as long as we do have young people willing to come in and keep growing the sport, then the sport will be in a good place.
And Cite D'Or has those key races set out for her plan in the UAE. Final question: what's a race that you would really like to win in the Middle East?
It'd still be the Dubai World Cup.
Yeah,
that's the one, and that's the one I think all the other states are trying to become, really. So that would be the one for me. Yeah.
Awesome. This has been so great, Harry. Thanks for joining us tonight on Etihad Cargo Connections. I'm your host, Rowan Anderson, and we've been joined by the great Harry Eustace. Thanks again, mate.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Rowan.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, sir.